Hi there, and welcome back to Stitches Past 5. My name is Vera, and today we're going to do a yarn review, in particular a review of a cotton yarn. It's the Drops Cotton Light yarn, so this one right here. And yeah, I just thought it's summer, so it's a little bit warmer. Maybe you don't want to be working with crocheting with knitting with the thicker woolen heavy yarns. I find that myself if I'm just sitting on my couch working, crocheting on something, knitting something late at night. I just actually finished a woolen sweater and that was very warm. So I'm looking forward to working in something a little bit lighter that's not gonna act as this really warm, thick blanket on me when I'm just watching TV at night, doing my crocheting. So yeah, this yarn is a cotton polyester mix. It's 50% cotton, 50% polyester, and it's gotten some very mixed reviews online. I bought a lot of this yarn, I bought a bunch and then I bought a bunch more because I do work with it. I like working with it, but there are definitely some things and some reasons that I definitely understand why people do not like this yarn, but I'm gonna get into those in a second. So to start off with, I thought I was gonna show you some of the things that I've made with this yarn so you can get an idea of the items that are maybe suitable for this yarn, because not everything is suitable for a cotton polyester mix yarn, of course. So this first one right here is this little pouch I made for my crochet hooks. I know I showed my plastic IKEA bag of hooks, and then I decided, okay, I do want to upgrade this a little bit, so I made this little pouch, just free-handed it literally, and it has all my crochet hooks in here. I do have separate like boxes for my knitting needles and supplies and my crochet supplies just to keep those a little bit more organized. So this is the pouch I have. This one I use the stitch consisting of like single crochets into different holes, just alternating. I actually forget the name of the stitch at the moment, but I think it's this really beautiful, effective color interplay, and it's made with this yarn. So it's really sturdy. Yeah, I just enjoy opening up my little pouch, touching it, and yeah, it definitely serves its purpose. Another thing that I made with this yarn is this, yeah, I use it as a dishcloth now. This was actually the first attempt of making the pouch, which is why it's exactly the same color and stitch. I just realized that I made it too narrow, like not the length of a crochet hook, but I didn't want to give up on it. I didn't want to unravel it, and I thought, you know what, it's a cotton yarn, cotton polyester blend yarn, and I knew that that would work well as like a kitchen scrubby washcloth, whatever. And this one has also been washed a number of times. So on this one, you can kind of see that it's been washed. I mean, I really use this to like scrub pots and pans, and this has gotten a lot of friction on it, and that's also why I wanted to show you so you can see how this yarn acts once it's been used a whole bunch. Yeah, so this one, I would say that the colors are a little bit more faded, just a tiny slightly little bit. And mind you, I have washed this like probably around 10-15 times, and it gets scrubbed like every day that I use it when I use it in the kitchen. So this has gone through quite a bit, and for that I think it's actually held up relatively well. It is a relatively thick material, this one, so I really like it as a scrubby as a kitchen. It feels sturdy, it feels like it's going to clean some dirt. So yeah, so that's my scrubby, my kitchen cloth. This one is washed, don't worry. Then another thing that I've used this yarn with, and I really wanted to show you this one because I know that there's a lot of people out there making little amigurumi. So I have these two chicken that I free-handed. They were inspired by the Oak and Marlow chicken, but these are way smaller stitch, of course, so I had to rewrite a whole new pattern for them. And these are also, of course, made from this cotton light yarn. Here you can see that it does work up quite well. So there are a few string irregularities that I really tried to minimize, and I'll get into that later as a property of this yarn. But I think these chicken just really showcase the yarn. It just works really well. And I love these two chicken. They live on my shelf all day, every day, and I think they're just so cute. I made one smaller one and one larger one, and yeah, I think they're just so fun, and I'm really happy with this yarn choice because yeah, they just look fun, and it gives a nice texture difference to the plushies that are sitting next to it, which are also chicken, so I like that attribute that it gives it. Okay, another thing I made with this yarn is this bucket hat. So this one is of course color work. I changed color every single row with this one and then cut them, weaved them in on the inside. I think, yeah, for wearables, I definitely like this yarn and this bucket hat because there's so many different colors. It's just such a fun summer spring vibe, and yeah, really happy with this. It has a little bit of stretch, and it just also will let your head breathe versus making it with a full polyester yarn. So this one is just a little bit more breathable. It'll still give you the shade, and yeah, I'm really excited about wearing this in the summer. It hasn't gotten quite hot enough yet, but I'm looking forward to wear this. Okay, one thing that I have worn a bunch of times that I made with this yarn is the spring cardigan. I've shown this before. This is my Waiting for Spring cardigan. It's made in cotton light yarn. And I think a big advantage of this yarn is that with these granny square cardigans, sweaters, whatever, it doesn't get as heavy as a regular cotton yarn. So this is a DK weight yarn, which would make this jacket super, super heavy. But this is not too heavy, and it's nice to wear. Like, it has a little bit of weight to it, but not too much. So I think that's definitely an advantage of blending the cotton with the polyester. You still get the cotton properties, but you get that lightness of the polyester. And I think especially in something like this cardigan, that's really, really beneficial. So this is probably my biggest project with this yarn, was the Waiting for Spring cardigan, as I call it. I also made this into a pattern, and the little squares, I also have a tutorial of those up on my channel. But yeah, so that's the cardigan. It does pack quite big, like it doesn't like compress as much as maybe a pure polyester yarn would, but I don't mind it. I like this. Wearing it, just nice and cozy, like it kind of hugs me, but you also don't really sweat in it uncomfortably, which I find with a polyester yarn, there's always that little discomfort sweating going on, and I just love the blend. It's comfortable, and I think it just looks gorgeous with these colors as well. And then the last thing I want to show you that I made with this yarn is this baby blanket right here. This is really just a simple chevron pattern, double crochets all along, chevron style with a border on the outside. And I think for anything baby wearables, baby blankets, I would really, really recommend this yarn due to its composition. It's cotton polyester, so you can machine wash it, which is so, so nice. And yeah, really happy with how this one turned out. So there's another thing with Drops Cotton Light yarn. All right, so as to the specifics of this yarn, it comes in so many different colors. I have a bunch of the colors. I just picked out a few to show here. It comes in these 50-gram skeins. It says Drops Cotton Light on it, 50% cotton, 50% polyester. Recommended needle size is a 4mm hook, and according to what items I made here, I sized up or sized down, and I think it works well. Sizing down is a little bit tricky on this yarn just because it is composed of 8 different strands. I think it's 14 ply, 8 strands. Don't ask how that works mathematically, but that's what the specifics tell me online. And some people, me included, find, and this is probably the biggest criticism of this yarn, that it seems to come apart when you're working with it. Now, it was a bigger or a smaller issue depending on which size crochet hook I used and which stitch I used. So I found that with a little bit of a larger hook, so for example, when I made the baby blanket, I used a larger hook and I used double crochets only. It wasn't an issue at all. Like, I didn't find that the strands were coming apart at all. But when I used smaller hooks, like I did for these small little chicken amigurumi, it did tend to come apart a little bit. And if that's something that already happens to you with other yarn, then maybe this yarn isn't for you. If that's something that is never really an issue for you, then maybe you should try this yarn. Maybe this yarn will work just fine because of the way you crochet, you don't really have that issue. It does get a little bit more frustrating with treble crochets, especially I found, just because of the angle that treble crochets are worked, it tends to pull the yarn apart, and that can be very frustrating. So depending on your granny square or whatever you're making that uses different stitches, a lot of people online were very frustrated, and I understand that. I was also a little bit frustrated. For me, it was a matter of figuring out how I can use this yarn without it pulling apart, and to me, I figured it out, and then it worked more than fine. Every now and then I had something come apart, but it was mostly fine, and I think that's one of the major cons of this yarn. So I think if you're a knitter, this is less of a problem because of the motion of knitting. Of course, it'll depend a little bit on your knitting style. For me personally, when I knit, I never have any yarn come apart. It's only when I crochet, especially when a smaller hook is used with a bigger yarn. And that was exactly the case here, maybe a little bit more than with usual yarn. Another con of this yarn was that the colors didn't always match within the skeins of a batch. So for the cardigan I made, I actually had to order some more ochre yarn. So this, I guess it's sand ochre, of this color. And then it was a little bit different. Maybe something that only I notice, but if you're someone that's very color specific, color sensitive, if you're making a sweater, something wearable, then I would definitely try to order all my yarn from the same batch. And you can apparently also call Drops as a company to make sure that they get it from the same dye lot, so that your shades within one color are exactly the same, within one color code are exactly the same. I don't really notice it now anymore when I wear my cardigan, so it was really just when I was making it in like bright daylight, I was like, oh no, this doesn't quite match. I just continued, it was fine for me, and now I don't notice it, so maybe less of an issue. I think also when you're washing it, then those differences can show a bit more, because the dye lots, from what I found out online, are different ones often for the same color, and that's not something a high quality yarn would do, but at the price that this yarn comes at, which I'll get to in a second, I think that's something that is really okay, especially if you can call Drops and ask them to pack it from the same dye lot, and they'll do that for you as well, from what I heard. Yeah, so I think those are the two main cons with this yarn. Let's get to the pros, because I don't want to just be negative, and I do really enjoy this yarn. I think there's always some you win, some you lose some, and maybe this one you lose a little bit more, and I understand why. But for the pros, I think the big attraction to this yarn is how cheap it is. I mean, Drops yarn is always known for how cheap they keep their prices, how cheap they keep their yarns. Even their woolen yarns, even their mohair silk yarns, they're still really affordable. And I think that's so important. Accessibility through pricing is really important. And this yarn does just that. So one skein of 50 grams, this thing right here, prices at around about €1, €1.10, €1.40. I've seen it as cheap as 90 cents for a skein, depending on what sales are running. And I think that's awesome. I think that's really cool, because it just makes it so affordable, so accessible. I think for this entire cardigan, just the yarn costs were under €20, which is amazing. Like, that's a really big advantage. And I know that yarn can get very expensive, and not everyone can afford that. So €1, €1.10, so I guess around $1 for all my American viewers. I think is really good for this yarn. And yeah, so what more can you say about a cheap yarn that still comes in? And this is my second pro. So many colors. I think I counted 32 different colors on the website. And I think it's awesome. Like, they have all sorts of colors: spring colors, summer colors, autumn colors. Everything you can imagine is probably there. And I think, yeah, what more can someone who buys yarn want than like a big array of colors? And it just, like this one, gives your projects just like such a fun feel. They even have a lot of shades of neutrals, which I also always like if I'm working on something that's a little bit less colorful, that's out there. Different shades of white, different shades of beige, gray, everything, it's all there. And I really enjoy seeing that as well. Another pro is, I think, the composition of the yarn. So it's not a full cotton yarn, it's not a full polyester yarn, it's exactly 50-50 of the two. And I think that gives the items you make with it a really good composition of, if you're making a wearable, I don't love a full cotton wearable. Like I need something else in there, because to me cotton, it like really stretches after time. It's heavy. I'm not the biggest fan. Maybe I've just been using the wrong cotton yarns, but I try to stay more or less clear of cotton. So I think through the polyester, the yarn gets a little bit lighter and the yarn doesn't stretch as much. And that's especially important for wearables. So my cardigan hasn't stretched at all, and I've worn it a good number of times now. And that also makes it machine washable, which is another big advantage. Especially, I think cotton and cotton blends are often used for baby wear and baby blankets and so on and so forth. And I think that's something that you do not want to be hand washing, I think. And I would never want to gift a parent something that they feel like they need to put on their child because it was a gift, and then it be a really big pain to get clean again. So I think with this, you don't need to worry at all. You can put it in the washing machine, I think up to 40 degrees, and it's perfectly fine when it comes out. For me, the colors haven't bled at all in the wash when I've washed them. So that's also always a really good property and just a nice bonus, because I think with a lot of wool wearables, washing is one of those things. Maybe you don't have to wash them that often because it is wool, but when you do, it is a whole process. And I think that's fine because it's wool. But I think with cotton, polyester blend yarns like this one, it's a lovely property that you can just throw it in the wash and be done with it. Yeah, so I think those are my 2 cents on this yarn. Would I recommend this yarn? I would, but beware that there are some things that come with a lower price. So if you're buying a cotton yarn that's, say, 3, 4, 5, even I've seen 7, 8 euros for 50 grams, you wouldn't be okay with it, separating the skeins, separating the strands a little bit when you're working with it. You wouldn't be okay with tiny mismatches in color. I think when a yarn costs €1 per 50 grams, that's something that I'm okay with, knowing that I didn't spend that much money on. I'm okay with that lower quality. And I think if that sounds like that's something you'd be totally fine with, then I would recommend this yarn. If you have a lot of money lying around and if you want to go and get your bougie cotton yarn, then I wouldn't recommend this yarn, because then there's just something that you would prefer over it, and probably something that that's better than this. I think for the purpose of many things, it's a wonderful yarn, and I do recommend it, especially because of its colors, because you can wash it and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's personal preference. Maybe it's just something that you need to try out. I've tried to give my good impression of it, but I hope that you can make, hopefully, a better decision about whether or not you want to buy this yarn in the future. So if you've used this yarn before, I would love to hear all about it in the comments below, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.